My husband looked me in the eye and said his mistress was more important than our children. He didn't say it in a heated argument or out of a moment of anger. He said it calmly, while our 7-year-old son was crying in the next room. He thought he was being honest and brave, but he didn't realize he had just handed me the one weapon I needed to erase him from our lives forever. Most people think an affair is the end of a family, but for me, it was just the beginning of a game he didn't even know we were playing. Before I show you the secret recording that made a room full of lawyers go dead silent, let me know where you're watching from and subscribe, because you're about to see what happens when a mother stops being a victim and starts being a hunter. 12 years. That's how long I had been married to Lance. We had a life that most people would call perfect. We had a nice house with a white fence, a golden retriever that slept at the foot of our bed, and 2 kids who were the center of my universe. Mia was 10, a quiet girl with a talent for drawing, and Jake was 7, a ball of energy who lived for soccer. For over a decade, I thought Lance and I were a team. We had built everything from nothing. When we first got married, we were eating ramen on the floor of a tiny studio apartment. I worked 2 jobs so he could finish his business degree. I believed in him. I believed in us. Everything started to change about 6 months ago. It wasn't a big explosion, it was a slow leak. It started with the Thursdays. Lance came home one evening and told me that his company was starting these new strategy meetings. He said the department was under a lot of pressure to hit their quarterly goals, and the only time everyone could meet was Thursday nights. He told me he'd be home late, probably around midnight. I didn't even blink. I was proud of him. I told him I'd keep his dinner warm in the oven and make sure the kids were quiet so he could sleep in a little the next morning. But the man who came home on those Thursdays wasn't the man who left in the morning. Normally, Lance smelled like the break room coffee and the stale air of an office building. Now, he came home smelling like high-end sandalwood cologne and expensive gin. He was energized, his eyes bright in a way I hadn't seen in years. When I asked how the meetings went, he'd give me vague answers about logistics and synergy. He started dressing differently, too. He traded his comfortable button-downs for slim-fit shirts and started going to a barber that charged $80 for a fade. I told myself he was just hitting his stride, that this was what success looked like. I was his biggest cheerleader, never realizing I was cheering for the person who was dismantling my life. The first real crack in the wall appeared on a Tuesday afternoon. I was picking up Mia from her art club at the elementary school. As we walked to the car, Mia pointed toward the parking lot exit. "Look, Mommy, there's Daddy's car," she said. I looked, and sure enough, Lance's silver sedan was pulling out. But Lance was supposed to be in a meeting 3 towns over. Then Mia said something that made my blood run cold. "He's giving Mrs. Rivera a ride again." They were laughing a lot when he picked her up. Mrs. Rivera was the new art teacher. She had transferred into the district a few months prior. She was young, maybe 25, with long dark hair and a way of wearing scarves that made her look like she lived in a gallery. I knew her because I had introduced her to Lance at the school's welcome back night. I remember thinking she seemed lonely. When Lance got home that night, I mentioned it casually. I didn't want to sound like a jealous wife. "Mia said she saw you giving the art teacher a ride today," I said while stirring the pasta. Lance didn't even flinch. He just opened the fridge and grabbed a beer. "Oh, yeah. Her car wouldn't start. I was just being a good neighbor, Sarah. You're always telling me I should be more involved with the school community. Don't tell me you're actually upset about me being a decent human being." He said it with such a tone of disappointment that I felt small. I felt like the crazy wife he was starting to describe to his friends. I apologized for bringing it up. I went back to the pasta, feeling a pit of guilt in my stomach for doubting the man I loved. But the Thursdays kept going. And then the Saturdays started. Lance said he had to go on golf trips with important clients. Then Sunday brunches with investors. Our son, Jake, had a soccer tournament on a Saturday morning in the pouring rain. He had been practicing his headers for weeks. He kept looking at the sidelines, waiting for his dad to show up. Lance never did. When he finally walked through the door at 6 p.m., smelling like the outdoors and expensive scotch, Jake ran up to him. "Dad, I scored 2 goals. Did you see?" Jake asked, his eyes wide. Lance barely looked at him. He was busy scrolling through his phone. "That's great, buddy. But making money for this family is more important than watching kids run around in the mud. I was closing a deal today. You'll thank me when you have a car at 16. Jake's face fell. He walked back to his room without another word. That was the first time I felt a spark of real anger. It wasn't about me anymore, it was about the kids. The following Thursday, I decided I couldn't take the silence anymore. I told myself I was going to be a supportive wife. I packed a nice Italian dinner into containers and drove down to his office at 7 p.m. I wanted to surprise him, to show him I appreciated the long hours. When I got to the security desk, the guard looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. Lance? He left at 5, just like he does every day, the guard said. There aren't any meetings tonight, ma'am. The whole floor is dark. I stood in that lobby for a long time. The silence of the empty building felt like it was crushing me. I didn't cry. I just felt numb. I got into my car and drove. I didn't go home. My gut took over the steering wheel. I drove to the apartment complex where I knew Mrs. Rivera lived. It was a trendy place near the downtown area. And there it was. Lance's silver sedan was parked in a guest spot right in front of her building. I sat in my car for 3 hours. I watched the lights in her apartment. I watched the shadows move behind the curtains. At 10 p.m., the lights dimmed. At 11:30, Lance walked out. He wasn't walking like a man who had just finished a grueling strategy meeting. He was whistling. He had his hands in his pockets, and he looked younger, lighter. When he got home, I was sitting at the kitchen table with the lights off. When he flipped the switch and saw me, he jumped. "Geez, Sarah, you scared me," he said, trying to regain his composure. Late night at the office. I'm wiped. The security guard said you left at 5, Lance, I said. My voice was hollow. I went to your office. Then I went to Gloria's apartment. I saw your car. The silence that followed was heavy. I expected him to beg. I expected him to lie more. But Lance did something worse. He sat down across from me, sighed, and looked at me with pity. I didn't want it to happen like this, he said. But honestly, Sarah, you should be grateful for Gloria. She makes me happy. And when I'm happy, I'm a better father. I'm a better provider. Gloria gives me the energy to deal with the stress of this life. She makes me feel alive again. If you really loved me, you'd want me to be happy. I felt like I was having a stroke. You're telling me I should be happy you're cheating on me because it makes you a better father? In a way, yes, he said, standing up. Now, I'm going to bed. We can talk about the details later. But don't make this a thing. It doesn't have to change anything. But it changed everything the very next morning. Lance didn't wait for us to talk. He walked into the kitchen while the kids were eating their cereal and sat them down. Kids, I have some news, he said. I stood by the counter, frozen. Daddy has a special friend named Gloria. She's very important to me. She makes me smile, and you're going to be meeting her soon. Mia stopped eating her Fruit Loops. Is she the lady from my school? She asked. She is, Lance said with a grin. And she's amazing. You're going to love her. Mia started to cry. She was 10, old enough to understand the weight of what was happening. Lance didn't hug her. He didn't comfort her. He just looked annoyed. Mia, stop being selfish. This is a good thing for Daddy. You should want me to be happy. Jake just stared at his bowl. Is she why you missed my soccer game? Lance didn't even blink. Gloria is a priority, Jake. You'll understand when you're older. Now, finish your breakfast. That weekend, the nightmare became public. Jake had another soccer game. I was standing on the sidelines with the other parents, trying to hold my head high. Suddenly, I saw Lance walking across the grass. But he wasn't alone. Gloria was on his arm. She was wearing a tight, bright red dress that was completely inappropriate for a Saturday morning youth sports event. She was clinging to him, laughing loudly, making sure everyone saw them. Lance introduced her to the other parents as his colleague. I was standing 5 feet away. The other moms looked at me with horror and pity. I wanted to sink into the earth. But the worst part was the game. Jake was playing his heart out. He broke away from the defense, dribbled past the goalie, and scored. It was the best goal of his life. He turned to the stands, his face beaming, looking for his father's approval. He didn't find it. Lance was busy kissing Gloria. He didn't even see the ball hit the net. Jake stood there on the field, his arms dropping to his sides. He looked like a balloon that had just been popped. Lance missed the entire moment because he was too busy showing off his new passion. On the drive home, Lance announced that Gloria would be joining us for family dinner every Friday. The kids need to get comfortable with her, he said. She's going to be a permanent part of this family. Absolutely not, I said. This is our home, Lance. You can't just bring your mistress to dinner with our children. I don't get a vote, he snapped. I pay the mortgage, Sarah. Gloria makes me feel alive. She's an example of real love, real passion. Our marriage, it was just settling. The kids need to see what it looks like when two people actually want to be together. It'll be a good lesson for them. The first Friday dinner was a disaster. I tried to stay in my house, but Lance had told the kids if they didn't come to the table, they'd be grounded for a month. Gloria walked into my kitchen like she owned it. She was carrying a bottle of wine and a bouquet of flowers that she handed to me like I was the maid. "Oh, this place is so cozy," Gloria said, looking around with a smirk. "A bit cluttered, but we can fix that." She walked to the head of the table and sat in my chair. My chair. The one where I had sat for 12 years, feeding my babies and helping with homework. When Mia walked in, she stopped. "That's Mommy's chair," she said softly. Gloria didn't move. She just smiled. "Sometimes change is good for everyone, Mia. It's important to try new things." Lance sat down next to her and patted her hand. "Mia, be respectful to Gloria. She's a guest." Throughout the dinner, Gloria talked about her travels, her artistic journey, and her philosophy on life. She ignored the kids unless she was correcting their posture. She asked them to call her Glow. "I'd rather not call you anything," Jake said, staring at his chicken. Lance stood up, slamming his hand on the table. "Jake! Go to your room. No dessert. You will not be rude to Gloria in this house." Jake left, his head hanging low. I watched my son go and felt a coldness settle in my chest that I had never felt before. Over the next few weeks, Gloria started coming over more and more. She started redecorating. She told Lance the house lacked sophistication. One afternoon, I came home to find the refrigerator bare. All of the kids' artwork, the finger paintings from kindergarten, the gold star spelling tests, the drawings Mia had worked on for hours, were gone. "Where is the kids' art, Lance?" I asked. Gloria thought it was cluttered, Lance said from the couch. "She's right. It looks messy. We should encourage the kids to do real art, not just scribbles." Gloria offered to teach Mia real technique instead of that amateur stuff she does. When Mia heard this, she ran to the kitchen and saw her butterfly drawing in the trash. She started to sob. Gloria walked in, looking bored. "Mia, don't be so dramatic. I can show you how to draw a real butterfly. Those proportions were all wrong anyway. You have to learn that if you want to be great, you have to be criticized." "I like my drawings," Mia screamed. Gloria looked at Lance. "See? This is what I was talking about. Sarah is raising rude, entitled children. They have no respect for culture." Lance made Mia apologize to Gloria. My 10-year-old daughter had to say she was sorry to the woman who threw her heart in the garbage. Then came Jake's 10th birthday. I had been planning it for months. He wanted a party at the local trampoline park with his entire class. I had the invitations ready to go. On the morning of his birthday, I was getting the cake ready when Lance walked in. "Change of plans," he said. "Gloria thinks the trampoline park is too chaotic and loud. It's not a good environment for cultural enrichment. We're taking the kids to the art museum instead. Gloria has a friend who is doing a private tour of the Renaissance wing." "Lance, it's his 10th birthday," I said. "He hates museums. He wants to jump with his friends. He needs to learn to appreciate the finer things," Lance said. "Gloria's influence is more important than some loud party. He'll thank us when he's an intellectual." Jake spent his 10th birthday walking through silent, cold hallways, listening to Gloria lecture him about brush strokes. He wasn't allowed to run. He wasn't allowed to laugh. His friends all went to the trampoline park without him. That night, I found him in his room, crying himself to sleep. I went to Lance's office. I was shaking with a rage that felt like it was going to set my skin on fire. You ruined his birthday, Lance. You chose her over your own son's happiness. How can you look at yourself in the mirror? Lance looked at me with a cold, dead expression. I'm doing what's best for him. Gloria is more important than the kids right now because she makes me the man who can provide for them. Without her, I'm miserable. And a miserable man can't lead a family. If the kids are unhappy for a few days, so be it. They'll thank me one day when they're successful because of the culture she brought into this house. She is my priority, Sarah. Get used to it. Gloria is more important than the kids. I whispered. Yes, he said, turning back to his computer. She is. I didn't say another word. I walked out of the room and went to the kitchen. I grabbed an old notebook from the junk drawer. I sat down at the table and I started to write. I wrote down the date, Jake's 10th birthday. I wrote down what happened at the museum. I wrote down Lance's exact words. Gloria is more important than the kids. I wrote it 3 times. I realized then that Lance thought he was the one in control. He thought because he held the paycheck, he held the power. He thought he could treat my children like obstacles in the way of his new passion. But he had forgotten one thing. I had been his partner for 12 years. I knew where every cent was hidden. I knew how the company portal worked. And most importantly, I knew that in a court of law, a father who admits his mistress is more important than his children is a father who is about to lose everything. I sat there until the sun started to come up. I filled 12 pages with every missed game, every cruel comment from Gloria, every time the kids were sent to their rooms for being disrespectful to a woman who was destroying their home. My hand was cramping, and the ink was bleeding through the paper, but I didn't stop. Lance thought he was building a new life with Gloria. He didn't realize that I was currently building the cage that would keep him away from my children forever. He thought I was the settling wife who would just take it. He was about to find out that a mother's love isn't about settling. It's about war. I looked at the clock. 5 a.m. I heard the shower start upstairs. Lance was getting ready for another day of providing. I stood up, tucked the notebook into a hidden spot under the sink, and grabbed my phone. It was time to start making copies. It was time to start gathering the evidence he couldn't delete. I looked at my reflection in the dark kitchen window. I didn't see the tired, sad wife anymore. I saw a hunter. I waited until I heard the heavy, rhythmic snoring that meant Lance was dead to the world. For years, that sound had been a comfort to me, a signal that my partner was safe beside me. Now, it sounded like a saw cutting through the last remains of my heart. I slipped out of bed, my feet hitting the cold hardwood floor with a silent precision I didn't know I possessed. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't need to. I knew every inch of this house. I knew where the floorboards creaked and where the shadows gathered. I felt like a ghost in my own life, haunting the hallways of a home that was being stolen from me one Thursday at a time. I made my way to Lance's home office. He always kept it meticulously organized, a testament to the provider image he loved so much. I sat in his leather chair, the scent of his sandalwood cologne still clinging to the headrest, and I felt a wave of nausea. This was where he sat while he planned his lies. This was where he balanced the books of our life while siphoning off the emotional capital for Gloria. I reached for the bottom drawer of his filing cabinet. It wasn't even locked. That's how little he respected me. He didn't think I was smart enough or brave enough to ever look. He thought I was the settling wife who would just keep making dinner and washing his shirts while he dismantled our children's future. I pulled out the bank statements first. My phone camera clicked in the dark, the small flash suppressed, but the screen glowing like a beacon of justice. I scrolled through months of transactions. I found the truth hidden in the numbers. There were business dinners at 5-star restaurants on nights when he told me he was eating a sandwich at his desk. There were jewelry store charges that didn't match anything in my jewelry box. I saw the wire transfers to Gloria's account, disguised as consulting fees. He was literally paying her to destroy our family using the money that was supposed to go toward Jake's braces and Mia's college fund. Then I found the work calendar. I logged into his company portal using the password he'd never bothered to change, our anniversary date. The irony felt like a physical blow. I looked at the Thursdays for the last 6 months. Every single one of them was blank after 5 p.m. No strategy meetings. No late-night brainstorming sessions. Just a long, empty space where he should have been with us, but was instead with her. I photographed every single page. I sent the files to a secret email address I'd created at 4 in the morning, watching the progress bar move with a sense of grim satisfaction. Every sent notification was a nail in the coffin of his lies. When the sun started to peek through the blinds, I went back to the kitchen. I didn't make breakfast. I didn't brew coffee. I just sat there and waited. When Lance finally came downstairs, he was humming. He looked at me, then at the empty table, and frowned. "No coffee today?" he asked, as if I were a malfunctioning appliance. "I'm taking the kids to Gwyneth's for the weekend, Lance," I said. My voice was flat, devoid of the emotion he usually used to manipulate me. "We need some space." He didn't even stop scrolling through his phone. "Fine. Whatever. I have plans with Gloria anyway. It'll be nice to have the house to ourselves for once. Maybe she can finally get started on that vision board for the living room without the kids underfoot." He walked out the door without a second glance. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't ask if the kids were upset. He just saw our departure as a convenience. I watched his car pull out of the driveway, and for the first time in months, I could breathe. The air in the house didn't feel so heavy anymore. I woke the kids up and told them we were going on an adventure. I watched them pack their bags with a mixture of heartbreak and hope. Mia grabbed her sketchbook and her favorite set of charcoal pencils, the ones Gloria hadn't thrown away yet. Jake grabbed his soccer ball and the worn-out teddy bear he pretended he didn't need anymore. They didn't ask why we were leaving. They didn't ask when we were coming back. They just moved with a quiet, frantic energy, as if they were afraid that if they didn't leave now, they'd be trapped in Gloria's museum forever. Gwyneth's house was a sanctuary. It smelled like lavender and old books, and it was filled with the kind of messy, beautiful life that Lance and Gloria were trying to erase from our home. Gwyneth didn't ask questions. She just folded me into a hug and led the kids to the guest room where she'd already set up a Nintendo Switch and a pile of board games. I sat at her kitchen table, and for the first time, I let the tears fall. I cried for the 12 years I'd wasted. I cried for the children who had been told they were secondary to a mistress's passion. "What's the plan, Sarah?" Gwyneth asked, handing me a mug of tea. "I'm going to see Jillian Rowe," I said, wiping my eyes. Jillian Rowe was a legend in the city. She was the kind of lawyer who didn't just win cases, she dismantled opponents. Her office was in a sleek building downtown, all glass and steel, and when I walked in, I felt like I was entering a war room. Jillian was taller than I expected, with sharp, gray hair and eyes that seemed to record every word I said before I even finished speaking. I laid out the notebook, the photos of the bank statements, and the recording I'd made of Lance's "Gloria is more important" speech. Jillian listened in silence. She didn't offer empty platitudes. She didn't tell me everything would be okay. Instead, she leaned back in her chair and looked at the pile of evidence. "You've done well, Sarah," she said. "Most women in your position are too paralyzed by grief to act. But you've given me a roadmap to his destruction. In this state, a judge will look at a father who explicitly prioritizes a mistress over the psychological well-being of his children and see a liability. We aren't just going for divorce. We're going for a total protective sweep." But then she gave me the news I didn't want to hear. "You have to move back in." I felt my heart drop. I can't be in that house with her. "If you stay at Gwyneth's, his lawyer will argue abandonment of the marital home," Jillian said, her voice firm. "They'll claim you're unstable and that you've kidnapped the children. We need you on the inside. We need you to be the stable parent who is trying to make it work while he brings a stranger into the home. Every time she insults the kids, every time he chooses her over a school event, you document it from the front lines. We need the judge to see that the children aren't safe in their own home as long as Gloria is there." Going back to that house felt like walking into a cage. When we pulled into the driveway, Gloria's car was parked in my spot. I walked through the front door and the smell of her floral perfume hit me like a physical assault. The living room was different. The cozy rug was gone, replaced by a cold, modern piece that looked like it belonged in a lobby. The walls were bare where the family photos used to hang. "Oh, you're back," Gloria said, walking down the stairs in one of my silk robes. "Lance said you were having a little episode. I've already started clearing out the guest room for my art studio. I hope you didn't leave anything important in there." I didn't answer. I just walked past her, my phone already recording in my pocket. I went to the kitchen and saw the trash bag. It was sitting by the back door, overflowing with paper. I opened it and felt a scream build in my throat. It was Mia's art. Months of her hard work, her dreams, her colors, all crumpled and discarded like waste. I waited until Mia came into the kitchen. I saw the moment she saw the bag. Her face didn't just crumple, it went blank. It was the look of a child who had realized that her world didn't value her. "Why did she do it, Mommy?" Mia whispered. "Because she's afraid of how bright you are, Mia," I said, pulling the drawings out one by one. I photographed them in the trash, then I hid them in the trunk of my car. The next few days were a blur of calculated endurance. I watched Gloria try to play stepmom in the most twisted way possible. She decided she was going to give Mia an art lesson. She sat my daughter down at the table and proceeded to tear apart a drawing Mia had made of our dog. "The shading is all wrong, Mia. It looks like a cartoon. If you want to be a real artist, you have to understand anatomy. This is just childish." I watched from the doorway, my hands shaking. I saw Lance walk in and nod in agreement. "Listen to Gloria, Mia. She has a degree. She's trying to help you not be mediocre." I didn't interject. I just went to my room and wrote it all down. Tuesday, 4:15 p.m. Gloria belittles Mia's talent. Lance supports the emotional abuse. Mia retreats to her room and cries for 2 hours. The real turning point came when I took the kids to see Curtis Walker. He was a child psychologist who specialized in high-conflict divorces. He was a gentleman with a calm office filled with toys and beanbag chairs. He took Mia in first, then Jake. I sat in the waiting room, my stomach in knots. When Curtis finally called me in, his face was grave. "Sarah, the children are in significant distress," he said. He laid a drawing on the desk. It was from Jake's session. It showed a house split down the middle. On one side, Lance and Gloria were giant figures, holding hands and laughing. On the other side, Mia, Jake, and I were tiny, huddled in a corner. There was a thick, black line drawn between the two groups. Jake had pressed the crayon so hard it had torn the paper. "Jake feels like he's lost his father," Curtis said. "And Mia feels like she's being erased. They aren't just sad, they're experiencing a trauma response. I will be writing a full report for the court. This environment is toxic for their development." That night, I sat at the kitchen table while Lance and Gloria were upstairs laughing. I felt a strange sense of power. They thought they were winning. They thought they were building a passionate, new life. They had no idea that every laugh, every insult, and every discarded drawing was being added to a file that would eventually bury them. I looked at the black line Jake had drawn. It wasn't just a line anymore. It was a boundary. And on the other side of that boundary, I was building a life where my children would never have to wonder if they were important. I picked up my phone and sent the therapist's report to Jillian Rowe. "We have the proof," I typed. "What's the next move?" Jillian's reply came seconds later. "Wait for the birthday. He's going to make a mistake. They always do when they think they're untouchable." I looked out the window at the dark driveway. I realized that Lance wasn't the man I had married 12 years ago. He was a stranger who happened to share my house. And I was no longer the woman who had promised to love him forever. I was the woman who was going to make sure he never hurt my children again. I closed my eyes and whispered to the silence of the kitchen, "You have no idea what's coming for you, Lance." The house had become a battlefield where only one side knew the war had started. Every morning, I woke up in a room that felt less like mine and more like a hotel suite I was being evicted from. Gloria had stopped pretending to be a guest. She moved her things into the primary bathroom, pushing my skincare products into the back of the cabinet to make room for her expensive French oils. She didn't ask, she just took. And Lance stood there, leaning against the doorframe with a cup of coffee, watching her claim my space with a look of pride that made my skin crawl. He looked at her like she was a prize he had won, completely oblivious to the fact that he was standing in the wreckage of a 12-year marriage. I spent my days acting like the perfect, compliant wife. I smiled when it hurt. I stayed quiet when I wanted to scream. I was a ghost, drifting through the hallways with a phone in my pocket that was constantly recording. Jillian had told me that the more comfortable they felt, the more evidence they would give me. She was right. Arrogance is the greatest enemy of a secret, and Lance was becoming the most arrogant man I had ever known. He truly believed that his role as the provider gave him a divine right to be cruel. He thought that as long as the mortgage was paid and the fridge was full, he could treat his children's hearts like disposable clutter. The real blow came when I dug into our joint savings account. I had been so focused on the daily insults and the missed soccer games that I hadn't looked at the long-term numbers. I sat in the library on my lunch break, my laptop open, and felt the world tilt on its axis. The college funds. The accounts we had started the day each child was born. The money my parents had contributed for their grandchildren's future. It was gone. Not all of it, but significant chunks had been siphoned out over the last 4 months. I traced the transfers. $10,000 for a creative arts grant that went straight to Gloria's personal LLC. $5,000 for a luxury wellness retreat in Sedona. Another $8,000 for a gallery down payment. Lance was stealing from his children's future to fund his mistress's failing career. He was taking the money that was supposed to buy Mia's textbooks and Jake's first car, and he was handing it to a woman who thought their artwork was amateur. I sat in that quiet library and felt a cold, sharp clarity wash over me. This wasn't just an affair anymore. This was a heist. That night, I didn't confront him. I didn't demand the money back. I knew that if I showed my hand now, he'd find a way to hide the rest. Instead, I called Jillian from a burner phone I'd bought. "He's taking the college money," I whispered, my voice shaking. "He's emptying their futures for her." "Document the transfers, Sarah," Jillian said, her voice like steel. "This moves us from a simple custody battle into a financial misconduct case. We're going to freeze those accounts by the end of the week, but first, we need the soccer field incident." "You said Jake has a big game this Saturday?" "Yes," I said. "The championship." "Make sure Lance is there," she said. "And make sure Gloria is with him." Saturday morning was bright and crisp, the kind of day that should have been perfect. Jake was vibrating with nervous energy. He had his jersey tucked in tight, his cleats polished, and his lucky socks pulled up to his knees. He had been practicing his corner kicks until his legs ached. "Do you think Dad will actually watch today, Mom?" he asked as I tied his laces. "He said he had a big investor meeting again." "He'll be there, Jake," I said, my heart breaking for him. "I promise." I had texted Lance an hour earlier, telling him that a major partner from his firm was going to be at the game because his son was on the opposing team. It was a lie, but it was the only way to ensure Lance would show up. He couldn't resist an opportunity to network, especially if he could show off Gloria as his sophisticated partner. When we arrived at the field, the stands were packed with parents. I saw Lance's car pull into the lot 10 minutes before kickoff. He stepped out, looking like he was heading to a fashion show instead of a muddy soccer field. Gloria was draped over him, wearing a white designer jumpsuit and oversized sunglasses. They didn't sit with the other parents. They stood off to the side, near the goalpost, where everyone could see them. The game was intense. Jake was a powerhouse. He was fast, aggressive, and focused. Halfway through the second half, the score was tied. Jake got the ball at midfield. He spun around a defender, his eyes locked on the goal. The crowd went silent as he surged forward. This was his moment. This was the culmination of every practice, every sweat-soaked afternoon, every header he'd practiced in the backyard. He kicked. The ball soared through the air, curving perfectly into the upper corner of the net. The crowd erupted. The parents were screaming, the coach was jumping, and Jake's teammates swarmed him in a giant huddle of joy. When the huddle broke, Jake did what he always did. He looked to the sidelines. He looked for his father. Lance wasn't looking. He had his back turned to the field. He was pinned against the fence, his arms around Gloria, laughing as she whispered something into his ear. He was so busy kissing her, so busy playing the role of the passionate lover, that he missed the greatest achievement of his son's young life. He didn't see the goal. He didn't hear the roar of the crowd. He was completely deaf to the world because Gloria was his only frequency. Jake stood there, frozen on the grass. The joy drained out of his face so fast it was like someone had pulled a plug. He didn't celebrate. He didn't high-five his friends. He just stood there, looking at his father's back, while the woman who threw his art in the trash ran her fingers through his father's hair. I had my camera out. I wasn't filming the goal. I was filming the sideline. I captured the goal, the roar of the crowd, and the absolute, sickening indifference of the man who claimed Gloria made him a better father. I captured the moment Jake's shoulders slumped, and the moment he walked back to the center line with his head down, a 10-year-old boy who had just learned that he would never be enough to pull his father's eyes away from a mistress. After the game, Lance walked up to Jake, clapping him on the back with a fake, distracted enthusiasm. "Good job out there, Tiger." I heard the crowd cheer. "Must have been a good play." "You didn't see it, Dad," Jake said. His voice was flat, empty of the hope he'd had that morning. "I was busy, Jake," Lance snapped, his tone instantly shifting to irritation. "Gloria was telling me something important." "Don't be so sensitive." "I'm here, aren't I?" "Most dads are still at the office." Gloria smirked, adjusting her glasses. "You really should work on your footwork, Jake. You looked a bit clumsy in that last transition. Maybe if you focused more on the art of the game instead of just running around, you'd be more impressive." Jake didn't say a word. He just walked to the car and stared out the window the entire way home. I felt a rage so cold and deep that it felt like ice in my veins. That was the moment the last shred of hesitation left me. I was done being a ghost. It was time to become the storm. Monday morning, while Lance was at work and Gloria was at her studio, I met with a real estate agent. I had been saving money in a secret account for 3 years, just small amounts from my library job, birthday gifts from my parents, and grocery money I'd managed to skim. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough for a deposit. I found a small, sun-drenched house 3 blocks from the kids' school. It was old, and the kitchen needed work, but it felt like a fortress. It had a big backyard for Jake to play soccer and a bright spare room that would belong entirely to Mia. No sophisticated redecorating. No abstract paintings. Just a place where they could be kids. I signed the lease with a hand that didn't shake. I spent the next 3 days moving their lives out of the mansion in small, invisible increments. Every time I went to the grocery store, I took a box of their favorite toys. Every time I went to the gym, I took their winter clothes and the artwork I'd rescued from the trash. I was dismantling our life in that house piece by piece, and Lance was too distracted by Gloria's vision boards to even notice the closets were getting emptier. The final straw came on a Wednesday evening. I walked into the kitchen to find Gloria and Lance sitting at the table with a stack of papers. They were floor plans. "We've decided to turn the kids' playroom into a guest suite for Gloria's friends from the city," Lance said, not even looking up. "The kids are too old for a playroom anyway. They should be in their rooms studying or practicing their art with Gloria. It's a better use of the square footage." "That's where they keep all their Legos, Lance," I said. "That's where Jake does his homework." "He can do his homework at the dining table," Gloria interjected, her voice airy and dismissive. "The playroom is a cluttered mess. It's bad energy for the house. We need a space for creatives to stay when they come for the gallery openings." "It's their house, too," I said. Lance finally looked at me, his eyes cold and hard. "It's my house, Sarah. I pay for it. And I've decided that Gloria's comfort and her career are a priority. The kids will adapt. They're resilient. Now, go make some dinner. Gloria wants that salmon dish you made last week." I didn't make the salmon. I went upstairs and I called Jillian. "It's time," I said. "Everything is in the new house. The kids are ready. I have the recordings, the financial records, and the soccer footage. I want him served tomorrow." "Understood," Jillian said. "Are the kids with you?" "They're at Gwyneth's for a sleepover," I said. "They don't know yet, but they'll be safe there when the papers hit the counter." Thursday morning was the quietest morning of my life. I watched Lance get ready for work. I watched him kiss Gloria in the hallway. I watched them drive away together, laughing about some joke I wasn't part of. I waited until the house was empty, and then I did the final sweep. I took the last of the family photos, the kids' toothbrushes, and my father's old watch from the nightstand. I walked into the kitchen and I placed the heavy, blue folder in the center of the table. Right where Gloria usually sat. On top of it, I placed the old notebook. The one where I had written, "Gloria is more important than the kids." I opened it to that page and circled the words in red ink. I walked out the front door and I didn't lock it. I didn't want any more barriers between me and my future. I got into my car and I drove to the rental house. When I pulled into the driveway, Gwyneth was there with the kids. They were standing on the porch of the little sun-drenched house, looking confused. I got out of the car and I walked up to them. I knelt down so I was at their eye level. "This is our new home," I said. "In this house, there are no priorities higher than you. There are no strategy meetings and no sophisticated rules. You can draw on the walls if you want to. You can play soccer in the hallway. You are the most important people in this world, and no one is ever going to tell you otherwise again." Mia looked at the house, then at me. "Is Gloria coming here?" "Never," I said. Jake let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for 6 months. He grabbed his soccer ball from the trunk and ran into the backyard, kicking it with a ferocity I hadn't seen since the championship. Mia walked into her new room and saw her rescued artwork pinned to the walls, and she finally smiled. But the battle wasn't over. My phone started buzzing an hour later. It was a flurry of missed calls and texts from Lance. He had found the folder. He had found the notebook. He had found the empty closets. The first text read, "What the hell is this? Where are my kids?" The second, "You can't do this. I provide for you. You have nothing without me." The third, from Gloria, "You're a bitter, pathetic woman. You'll regret trying to ruin Lance's happiness. We're calling the police." I didn't reply. I blocked both of their numbers. I sat on the floor of the empty living room with my children and we ate pizza out of the box. We laughed. We breathed. And for the first time in a very long time, the air felt clean. Jillian called me that evening. "He's spiraling, Sarah." His lawyer called me screaming about kidnapping. I sent them the therapist's report and the video of the soccer game. I told them that if they want to see the kids, they can explain to a judge why a provider misses his son's championship goal to make out with his mistress. They went very quiet after that. "What's next?" I asked. "Now," Jillian said, "we go to mediation. And we let him prove exactly how important Gloria really is." I looked at my kids, sleeping soundly on their new mattresses in their own rooms, and I knew that no matter how hard the fight got, I had already won the only thing that mattered. Lance walked into the mediation room with his chest puffed out, still wearing the expensive suits Gloria had picked for him. He looked like a man who thought he was walking into a coronation, not a divorce hearing. He hadn't seen the kids in 3 weeks, and his first words to me weren't about their health or their school. They were about the furniture. "You took the velvet armchair, Sarah," he hissed as he sat down. "That was Gloria's favorite piece. Do you have any idea how much that costs?" I didn't answer. I just sat next to Jillian, who was calmly laying out 4 thick blue folders on the table. Each folder was labeled with a different category: financial misconduct, emotional neglect, parental alienation, and professional assessments. Lance's lawyer, a man who looked like he spent more time at the tanning salon than in a courtroom, gave us a dismissive smile. He thought this was just another scorned wife case. He didn't know he was sitting across from a surgeon who had already mapped out exactly where to cut. The mediator was a woman named Miss Sterling. She had eyes like a hawk and a voice that didn't tolerate nonsense. She started by asking if there was any chance for reconciliation. Lance laughed. "Absolutely not," he said. "I'm in a high-passion relationship now. I've found a woman who actually supports my growth. Sarah is just trying to punish me for being happy." Jillian didn't even blink. She just opened the first folder. "Let's talk about that growth, Lance," she said. She placed the bank statements on the table. The room went silent as the siphoned college fund transfers were highlighted in yellow. Miss Sterling leaned in. Her eyebrows shot up as she saw the thousands of dollars taken from Jake and Mia's futures to pay for Gloria's creative arts retreats. "This is a joint account," Lance's lawyer stuttered. "He has the right to use his income. He doesn't have the right to commit financial fraud by siphoning funds intended for minors into the LLC of a mistress, Jillian countered. And he certainly doesn't have the right to do it while his children are sleeping in a house where their basic emotional needs are being ignored. Then came the recording. Jillian pressed play on her laptop. The room filled with Lance's voice, cold and confident. Gloria is more important than the kids right now because she makes me the man who can provide for them. The silence that followed that recording was different than any silence I'd ever heard. It was heavy, suffocating. Ms. Sterling looked at Lance for a long time. It wasn't a look of anger, it was a look of profound disgust. "Did you say those words, Mr. Vance?" she asked. Lance shifted in his seat. He looked at the recorder, then at me. It was taken out of context. Sarah was badgering me. I was stressed. I just meant that my emotional well-being is the foundation of the home. By putting a mistress above your 10 and 7-year-old children? Ms. Sterling asked. She didn't wait for him to answer. She picked up the next folder, the one from Curtis, the therapist. She read aloud the descriptions of Mia's anxiety and Jake's black line drawing. She read the soccer coach's statement about the missed goal. I watched Lance's lawyer. He was leaning back now, looking at his client like he was a sinking ship. He knew. He knew that no judge in the country would look at this pile of evidence and see a fit father. "Here is our proposal," Jillian said, sliding a final document across the table. Primary physical custody to Sarah. Supervised visitation for Lance, twice a month, at a neutral center. And a permanent restraining order keeping Gloria away from the children. If she is within 500 feet of them, the visitation is terminated immediately. Also, Lance will replenish the college funds in full, with interest, within 60 days. Lance exploded. He stood up, knocking his chair back. "You're crazy. You can't keep her away from them. She's going to be their stepmother. I pay for everything. This is my life." "Mr. Vance, sit down," Miss Sterling said. Her voice was quiet, but it had the weight of a mountain. "If this goes to trial, I will be the first person to tell the judge that you are an emotional danger to your children. You have demonstrated a total lack of empathy and a frightening level of self-delusion. You didn't provide for your kids, you robbed them. Now, you can sign this, or we can go to court next week, and I will make sure the public record includes every single word of that recording." Lance looked at his lawyer. The lawyer just shook his head. "Sign it, Lance," he whispered. "We can't win this. They have everything." Lance grabbed the pen. His hand was shaking so hard the signature was barely legible. He looked at me, his face red with a fury that had nowhere to go. "You'll regret this, Sarah. You've turned them against me. You've destroyed the only thing that made me happy." "No, Lance," I said, speaking for the first time. "I just reminded you that my kids aren't props. And they aren't secondary. They are the only thing that matters. You chose a mistress. I chose them. Let's see who ends up richer." The fallout happened faster than I expected. With his bank accounts frozen and the legal fees piling up, the king suddenly found himself without a crown. Lance had spent so much money trying to buy Gloria's love that he didn't have anything left to maintain the lifestyle she required. 2 weeks after the mediation, I got a call from Gwyneth. She was laughing. "You're never going to believe this, Sarah. I just saw Gloria at the downtown bistro. She wasn't with Lance. She was with some guy in a Porsche. I asked a friend who knows her, apparently, she moved out of the mansion 3 days ago. She told people that Lance was too much baggage and that his financial situation was too unstable for her creative spirit." I felt a tiny spark of justice, but I didn't celebrate. I didn't need to. I was too busy watching Mia paint a mural on her bedroom wall. It was a giant, colorful forest, filled with every animal she could think of. She was laughing, her hands covered in green and blue paint, not a single worry about proportions or realism. She was just a girl with a brush and a mother who believed in her. Jake was in the backyard, practicing his headers with Gwyneth's husband. I could hear them shouting and laughing through the open window. Jake wasn't looking at the stands anymore. He was looking at the ball. He was looking at his own feet. He was learning that his value didn't depend on who was watching. The final court date was a formality. The judge signed the papers without a second glance. Lance showed up late, looking disheveled. He didn't have Gloria on his arm. He didn't have the sandalwood cologne. He looked like what he was, a middle-aged man who had traded his gold for glitter and realized too late that he was holding a handful of dust. He gets his supervised visits now. Twice a month, in a sterile room with a social worker. I hear from Jillian that he spends most of the time trying to tell the kids that Daddy is the victim, but the social worker shuts him down every time. Mia and Jake come home from those visits and they go straight to their rooms to play. They don't cry anymore. They don't wonder why he doesn't love them. They've realized that his love was a small, broken thing, and they don't have to carry it for him. I'm sitting at my new kitchen table tonight. It's not velvet, and it's not sophisticated. It's a sturdy oak table I bought at a garage sale. The surface is covered in Jake's homework and Mia's sketches. There's a fresh drawing on the fridge. It's a picture of the four of us, me, Mia, Jake, and Gwyneth's golden retriever. There's no black line in the middle. There's no one huddled in a corner. We're all standing under a giant yellow sun, and everyone is smiling. Lance thought Gloria was the reason he could provide. He thought she was his priority. But as I look at my kids, healthy and happy and free, I realize I'm the one who provided the only thing that actually mattered, a home where they were never second best. I walked to the fridge and I added a new drawing to the collection. It was a simple heart, drawn in Mia's favorite charcoal. Underneath it, I wrote, "Priority, found." I turned off the kitchen lights and walked upstairs. I didn't have to check the locks twice. I wasn't waiting for a silver sedan to pull into the driveway. I wasn't wondering what cologne he was wearing. I was just a mother, going to sleep in a house filled with love. And for the first time in 12 years, I wasn't settling. I was living.